It's December 6th, 2017, and here's what's happening in games. Hoenn comes to Pokémon GO, a new Portal game, and Nintendo Classics on Nvidia Shield. The video game industry changes every day and your time is important. Let's get you caught up right now on Games in Time. Hello and welcome to Games in Time, the video game quick hits podcast that gets you all caught up on what's happening in the game industry. My name is Peter Spezia, and it's my job to deliver your news in expedited fashion. So let's get right to it. Niantic has announced that more characters are being rolled out to Pokémon GO. 50 of the 135 monsters from the Hoenn region, first discovered in Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, arrived this week. This follows the handful of Generation 3 Ghost Pokémon that were made available during a Halloween promotion for the game. Weather played a big role in Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire, so it's no surprise to see the game element make its way to GO as well. According to Niantic PR, as trainers are exploring the world around them in search of Pokémon, the current weather in their vicinity will be visible on the in-game map. The real-world weather around trainers will impact the gameplay of Pokémon GO in a variety of ways that include changing Pokémon habitats and where they can be found, increasing combat power, and earning more Stardust after catching a Pokémon. Players will be able to explore rainy, snowy, foggy, and windy conditions when the update rolls out to players soon. Even though the Game Awards take place within hours, that doesn't stop game announcements from being leaked. And would you have guessed that a new Portal game is on the way? To the dismay of some fans, it's called Bridge Constructor Portal, and it's a partnership between Valve and Head Up Games. Clockstone Software will use the popular property to develop a game where players solve puzzles with vehicles crossing bridges using portals. The game is coming to Steam and mobile devices on December 20th, with console versions, including Nintendo Switch, arriving next year. Now, you might not expect Nintendo games to appear outside of a Nintendo device, but what if I told you that remastered 1080p Wii classics are now available on Nvidia Shield? Well, in China anyway. It's all part of a deal between Nvidia and Nintendo to bring The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and Punch-Out, with Super Mario Galaxy coming soon to the set-top TV box in the burgeoning market. It's important to note that Nvidia previously partnered with Nintendo to develop the graphics chip that's in the Nintendo Switch, which is comparable in power to the one in the Shield. Ars Technica clarifies that the playback is done through Nvidia's GeForce Now streaming service instead of direct emulation. Yet this does beg the question why 1080p remastered versions of these games exist in the first place. Is this the test case for these games to eventually come to the Switch stateside? Stay tuned. And finally, we may have seen the first look at the new God of War's release date. For a brief period of time, the US PlayStation Store claimed that the game would arrive on March 22, 2018, before it was replaced with a December 31st placeholder. It is expected that Sony will use the upcoming PlayStation Experience event to provide updates on different games, like a God of War release date. Of note is the fact that not only is March 22nd a Thursday next year, but March 22nd, 2005 was the release date of the first God of War game. Stay tuned to the PSX pre-show event on Friday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time for more details. With the headlines out of the way, it's time to list the significant new games that are coming out. A Hat in Time comes to PS4 and Xbox One today, with its launch on PC back in October. This cute-as-heck 3D platformer was a Kickstarter darling and is rather reminiscent of games like Super Mario 64 and Sunshine. WWE 2K18 comes to Nintendo Switch today after it launched on other platforms in mid-October. The decreased power of Switch is rather apparent in this port, so definitely value its portability here if you're picking it up. And finally, Yakuza Kiwami 2 comes to PlayStation 4 in Japan on Thursday, December 7th. This wraps up a remarkable 2017 for the Yakuza franchise, with this remake of the 2006 game Yakuza 2. No localization has been confirmed yet, but one is expected to arrive next year, considering the West's big role in the series' revitalization. Now let's wrap things up with the Mailbag segment. You can send in your questions to the show on social media at GamesInTimePod or at GamesInTimePodcast@gmail.com. You can either submit your question in text or record it and I'll use the audio on the show. DQP asks, with countries like Belgium and states like Hawaii increasingly looking to regulate games with loot boxes, what do you think game companies like Blizzard or EA will have to do or change in the face of incoming regulation? What do you think will happen to ideas like skins in Overwatch or the Ultimate Team mode in the EA Sports games? I think I'm a bit of a pessimist about this, in that I think that the proposed legislation goes nowhere, at least stateside with the Electronic Software Association in the lobbying corner of the publishers. For them, it's going to be very difficult to make legislative changes based on the profits that are already being brought into investors. That is, at least in Trump's America, where business is king. To be honest, I think the Overwatch loot boxes and the EA Sports Ultimate Team card packs won't change much over the next several years because their in-game communities have already embraced the practice. It's good that players called out Battlefront 2 for what it was and brought attention to that manipulative design. It's that kind of attention that will be necessary for real change to happen. But when gamers have already given enough money to what they consider to be an acceptable practice, especially with certain games, then that kind of change may be too difficult to overcome. When it comes to self-control, addiction, and good parenting, I think those are topics for another time. Here in America, I personally doubt that there will be enough groundswell for nationwide loot box regulation to occur. And even if it did happen, would we trust that regulation to stop there and hope it didn't infringe on artistic expression? Now, if another country wants to ban certain games outright, that's their prerogative. It wouldn't be the first time it's happened after all. And that's all for this episode of Games in Time, brought to you by rhymeswithasia.com. We're still in the pilot stages, so we expect to be on podcast services next week. If you could like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, that would be greatly appreciated. You can find the show on Twitter at GamesInTimePod. I'm at Pete Speakeasy. And hey, enjoy watching the Game Awards. I'll be keeping my fingers crossed for my predictions of Andrea Renee as Trending Gamer and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild as Game of the Year. I'll leave you with 8 AM from this week's tempo control game, Animal Crossing New Leaf. So with that, I'm Peter Spezia. I'll see you next time.